Hi everyone, and welcome to our next video in our social psych unit. And today we are going to be continuing with social thinking, but we're going to be talking about attitudes and how our attitudes influence or maybe not influence the actions that we take, and how those attitudes can be changed based on certain persuasion techniques and the situation. So, just a basic definition of attitudes. I know a lot of times you just think an attitude is just how you feel, right? And it is. But an attitude is often made up of more than just how you feel. It's usually how you think, how you feel, and it usually predisposes you to act in a certain way based on however you feel. So, if you like something, then you're more likely to buy it or do it or help it or whatever, right? And then ultimately, as humans, we feel like our attitudes affect our actions. So if I don't believe in using animals for research, then that's my attitude, and then my action would be like I might support PETA, right? So those two things go together, right? They're congruent, right? They align. If you believe a person is mean, you dislike them, then maybe you're mean to them, okay? But the problem that we realize in psychology is that that's not actually always true, right? The correlation between our attitudes and our actions is 0.41. So it is a strong correlation, right? But it's definitely not always our attitude directs our action. And we'll talk more about that. Um, Before we go into talking a little bit more about attitudes and actions, I want to discuss the two different types of attitudes that you can have. So, a lot of the attitudes we tend to think about are these explicit attitudes. They're attitudes that you know, that you can feel, and that you can easily describe. I like, I dislike, I agree, I disagree, all this kind of stuff, right? Now, there's another type of attitudes, and these are called implicit attitudes. And these are hidden attitudes. And they are expressed in kind of subtle, automatic, unknown ways. And most of the time, when we talk about implicit attitudes, we are talking about some sort of prejudicial or discriminatory attitude. We'll come back to that more when we talk about prejudice and discrimination, but I just kind of wanted to put that up here as in the two basic types of attitudes that exist, and either can impact your actions. Let's say I wanted to change your attitude, right? What are two ways that I could do that, or what are some ways that I could do that? So there's two different ways that I could do this kind of cognitively, which is giving you information, right? So the first thing is through the central route. And this is basically me giving you evidence and logic. So like I provide you with facts and research and data and all of these things to try to convince you of a particular attitude. Like let's talk about global warming, right? So I give you all the statistics and everything that I can find so that it is a logical, sound argument with good evidence. My other way that I can persuade you, and this is used more often, is through a peripheral route. And what does that mean? So that means that I'm going to try to appeal to your irrational mind, right? I'm going to go around your rational mind, and I'm going to try to use your fears, your desires, your associations. I'm going to try to use like celebrities, right? I'm going to try to use all kinds of things to get you to agree with me or feel the way that I feel without giving you much teeth to the argument, right? Not really giving you a lot of evidence. And of course, most of the persuasions that we have in life, if you think about advertising, most advertising is based on like attractive people or cool things or wanting to fit in a group or wanting to have this because other people have it, right? It doesn't actually give you how effective the product is a lot of times, right? We talked about how those are two ways that you can kind of use persuasion, two different persuasion techniques that can impact people's attitudes. I want to now focus on methods that you can use to change the action and then change the attitude, right? So, what method can I use that will change your behavior and then eventually your attitude will go along with the behavior, even if in the beginning it didn't match, right? And there's lots of them, and we'll go over some more in class, but the two I really want you to get down, the two I'm going to talk about in your notes, are foot in the door phenomenon and the effects of role playing. So, foot in the door phenomenon or foot in the door technique. So this is another persuasion technique, but it involves action in that I ask you to comply with a small request. So let's say that I want you to sign a petition for me. The first thing that I might do is I might knock on the door and say like, oh, would you take a minute and look at my clipboard? So I get you to open the door for me. Or maybe I ask you if I want you to like put a sign in your yard. The first thing I ask you is like, oh, hey, could you put this sticker in your window about gun violence? And then I come back a month later and I say, I noticed you had that sticker on there. Would you be willing to put something on your lawn? And the idea is that when you agree to something small in the first place, you're likely later to agree with something big as long as it fits with the small, even if in the first place you would never have done it. So I never would have put that sign on my lawn in the first place. But now that I put the little sticker up, I figure, well, I might as well put the sign up because I must agree with it because I put the sticker up, right? The other thing is how role playing can affect your attitudes, right? So, of course, when you're role playing, you're role playing a behavior, right? And even if you know you're just pretending, so even if you know that it's fake, okay, they find that the role can be so powerful that you will adapt the attitudes that go along with the role and actually become the role, right? So, some examples of this in arranged marriages, right? People often, fall deeply in love with the person that they marry, even though in the beginning they were just kind of playing marriage, right? Like they'd never met each other. They were playing the role of a good wife and a good husband. And eventually you like really adapt and take in that role. Another example of this would be like actors who like lose themselves in their role, right? That they become that person. The famous example that I can think of is when we talk about Heath Ledger and the Joker, and they talk about how like that role kind of took over him, and some people talk about how they think it might have been related to his decision to commit suicide, right? So one of the most famous studies we have about role playing, okay, because this obviously we want to know more about this, is about it's called the Stanford prison study, the Zimbardo prison study. It took place at Stanford, and originally he was not supposed to study role playing. Like he wasn't studying role playing. He was studying the kind of impact of the prison environment, and so he took randomly like assigned men. Right, they were all the same kind of men, no emotional issues, no social issues, just randomly assigned, and made some guards and some prisoners. Right, and he actually went to the prisoner's house and had them arrested and like taken them to the jail at Stanford, right? And they lost their names, and you can see they have like little like prison attire on, and they have numbers and all this kind of stuff, right? And he found that it like literally within 24 hours people had like taken on their role, and the guards hated the prisoners and trying to think about ways to like hurt them or embarrass them and make them do things like push-ups and jumping jacks in the middle of the night. And the prisoners already hated the guards, and they were trying to form against them, and neither of these things are true. They weren't prisoners or guards, right? But they totally just took on the role, and it changed their action, and then it changed their attitude. So the question is, why does this happen, right? Why does our action change our attitude? And the answer, well, one answer is the idea of cognitive dissonance. So this is when our actions and our attitudes don't match. We like feel some tension on the inside, so we don't feel good about it, right? So like let's say that you're against smoking and then you like smoke a cigarette. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. If you're against it, why would you do it? So you have to make a decision. Either you aren't really against it, or you are against it, but you did something, it doesn't make sense. So if what I'm going to do then is I'm going to change my attitude to fit my action, right? So if I if I say like I think smoking is bad, right, and then I have a cigarette, right, I'm going to say, oh well, like it's only bad if you do it all the time, and like that was just like a social thing, right? Like I'm going to make up a reason why it was okay for me. Okay, so the very famous study that we kind of like look at when we look at cognitive dissonance is Festinger's study about money and a boring activity. So I'm going to read you this, and then I'll finish it up in class. I want you to make a decision. So students were either paid a large or small amount to express enjoyment of a boring activity. So they had to lie, like either they loved it or they hated it, or they had to say that they loved it even if they hated it. Okay, they were either paid $1 or 20, and many of the students changed their attitudes about the activity. So I want you to think at the end, who changed their attitude more? Who actually said that they began to like the activity? Those who were paid $1 or those who were paid $20? Okay? Think about it. We'll talk about it in class. That's all for now, AP Psychos. And remember, psychology is flipping